At Sierra, discover great deals on top brand workout gear, like high-quality bikes, which might lead to another discovery. Getting back in the saddle isn't always comfortable. Good news is Sierra has massage guns. And chafe wipes, too. Discover top brands at unexpectedly low prices. Sierra, let's get moving.
Hey, Atlanta. Say hello to Small Business Help from Apple. That's right. We're here to make starting and running your business simpler. From helping you choose the right devices to setting them up hassle-free, we can help you build your business in no time. Speak to a business expert and get the help you need at no cost whatsoever. At Apple, we're open for your small business. Go to apple.com/small business or visit an Apple store to learn more.
Since you're new to H&R Block, we'll look at your returns from the last 3 years for any money your last guy might have missed for free.
I could get money back from last year?
You could. We'll find any mistakes.
Could have really used that 2 years ago when I dated that mistake for 5 months.
Don't leave money on the table. Switch to H&R Block and get a free second look review. Second look is included at no additional cost with the purchase of tax preparation. Results vary. All tax situations are different. Fees apply if you have us file an amended return.
How do you go from being in a band with one of the greatest singers of all time to just being in a band?
Welcome to another new episode of Live Through That. I'm your host, Mike Hipple, and on this podcast, we'll dig a little deeper into a pivotal moment into the lives of some of my favorite artists from the 80s and 90s. And this week, we're continuing on with our conversation with Simon Raymonde of Cocteau Twins. Last week, we discussed the early days of the band, and today we're going to look at the present day, starting off with his new book, In One Ear. It's currently available in the UK, and the audiobook is available in the US if you know where to look. And at the moment, we don't have an exact release date for a physical copy of the book in the States, but hopefully in the fall. So, without further ado, let's start the conversation today with why this book now?
I certainly had no plans, even maybe 3 years ago. I had no interest in writing be a musician, writing a book, because I'm not really that into them. They tend to be, I don't know, they're not really my favourite reading material, put it that way. But I do write a lot, and I do get asked to do, articles for magazines from time to time, and I was writing an article every month for this vinyl magazine called Long Live Vinyl that isn't around anymore, but I've written things for Pitchfork, and I like dabbling and write things every now and then. So it was always something I felt, well, I suppose I could do that one day if there was a reason to do it. But then I met with Warren Ellis, who's one of the artists on my label, with his band Dirty Three, and he's obviously part of Nick Cave's band as well, as you know. But he lives in Brighton, where I live, and we often get together. And he just I think he just finished making Carnage with Nick, and we just met up, and he was telling me all about it, and we started talking about his book, Nina Simone's Gum, which is an amazing read and a brilliant, brilliant story. And I just sort of asked him a bit about it, and it felt like when we were talking that his feelings about musicians writing books and my feelings were quite aligned. And I don't think he'd ever thought he would write a book either. But this sort of thing happened, this event happened at this Nina Simone concert that kind of gave him a reason to sort of start writing this book. Because a few people have said, you should write a book. And I've honestly had for the last 20 years, people are like, oh my God, you should definitely write a book. I'm like, well, maybe I will, but, the urge isn't really there right now. But after meeting Warren, I just thought a bit more about it and realized that there were some significant things in my life that a lot of people don't know about. And that maybe now that I'm in my 60s, maybe it would be useful to talk about them. Maybe somebody would get something out of it other than just me, So I started writing a few thoughts down, and an agent heard that I was doing something and contacted me, and I sent him stuff and blah, 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 blah. And then, ended up being asked to finish the book. So I really loved it. I have to say, it was a really enjoyable experience. I think it's a one and done thing, but I mean, unfortunately, there was quite a lot of it get left out because I wrote too much. It's funny because I started off writing not enough. I thought I'd finished and sent. I got 30,000 words. I thought, well, that sounds about right. And I sent it off to the publisher, and he was like, "Okay, this is really good, but when's the rest of it coming?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he was like, "Well, this is 30,000 words. A book has to be 100,000 words." I was like, "Oh shit." So I basically, that was my moment where I kind of like, okay, I really need to knuckle down and just actually sit in a cafe for the next 6 months, every day from 8 o'clock till 3 o'clock in the afternoon, just write. And that's what I did, and broke the back of the book. And by then I got 130,000 words. So that was like, mate, you've given me too many. We've got to lose 30,000 words. So there's quite a lot of the book isn't in the published book. So I have other stuff, but maybe he's right. He was always saying to me, I don't think that this bit's particularly relevant to your story. And I was like, well, I think you'll find it is. And then I sort of thought, well, he knows what he's talking about. He's a publisher. That's his job. Just because I think it might be interesting doesn't mean it is interesting. So I kind of let go of a lot of the things that I was sort of precious about, and it really was good to do that because it taught me some humility and to understand that I don't know everything, and this is not my field, this is not my area of expertise, but I could write another book if I had something to write about. I think that's the key, isn't it? It's like, has what I've got to say got enough interest to keep people's interest for a whole book? Probably right now, I don't think so, but who knows?
I was definitely interested to hear some of the stories that ended up on the cutting room floor, and thankfully, Simon was game to share some of that with us.
Well, yeah, there was a few. The Lost Horizons story, because Lost Horizons is the band that I started in 2016, 17 with my old 4AD friend Richie from Diff Jazz, and it was a very important moment in my creative life because it was the first time I actually had a band since Cocteau Twins, and I took me so long to almost 20 years to feel the sort of courage to get the courage to do that. Which in itself is interesting, I think. Like, why? What's that all about? Why would you not do music for 20 years? And I did write about that in the book, in this whole thing about, like, I found it really difficult to be in a band that wasn't with Elizabeth. Like, how do you go from being in a band with one of the greatest singers of all time to just being in a band that's just okay? I couldn't get my head around it until I realized I just really shouldn't be thinking of it like that. It's not a fucking competition. You just make music because you have to make music and because you want to. So once I'd sort of got over myself and stopped being such an arse, I really enjoyed making music with Richie, and I think it is an important story to be told. But maybe because the band sort of came out during that whole COVID thing, and we never really kind of broke through in any significant way. So I don't even think half the audience would even know what Lost Horizons was. So I think maybe that was Pete's point. Like, nobody knows Lost Horizons, so why would anyone care? Well, obviously, because I care. I think it's an important story, but he's probably right in the sense that we hardly toured. We played a few shows. It's a project where every single song is sung by a different singer. So it's a hard project. It was 2 double albums. Again, that those things are hard for people. They're hard for writers because writers are like, what, you expect me to listen to an hour and 10 minutes of this brand new band? No chance. So I think he's probably right. I probably wished it been in there, but I'm fine that it wasn't in there because I can always put it out on Substack, or I can put it out some point if I think the story is worth telling. I had a few friends who were like, why isn't that in there? And I'm not quite sure what the answer is, other than my publisher didn't think it was relevant, and they obviously think it was. So I'm not sure.
I think this would be a great time to play you a little bit of the Lost Horizons project. Here's a bit of one of Simon's favorite tracks from that project, Every Beat That Counts. This is from their second album, In Quiet Moments, which features the singer Cavi Quay. Simon told me that if you liked Cocteau Twins, you'll probably like this track.
Mercy will be passed so soon. Our laziness, our weaknesses, the bridges we burn, will pass it all over to you. Can we feel our blood running? It reminds us of life and how fragile it is when inside us calm. Boldness will come our way.
Yeah, and it's what I'd sort of been doing for the previous 20 years is working, putting all my efforts into other people's careers, helping them with theirs, which I find very rewarding. It's not the same as making your own music and putting out your own music. It really isn't, but it does scratch the itch. You know what I mean? So. But you know, it's a very, very different thing. And then once I finally got into the studio and I was like, oh my God, you know, this is just the most amazing fun. And I loved the first record to a point, and then I don't think I quite got it right with the sort of sonic side of things. And then with the second record, which I did pretty much completely during COVID in my studio in the garden there, mixed it all myself, and I am so proud of that record, more than pretty much anything I've ever done before. So I know I'm happy I made it. It's out there. I think the whole record is really special. And if people ever find it and discover it and enjoy it, well, then that's a great thing. I can't do more than that. You know, and music, it is like that. There's so much music for people out there right now. There's too much. It's really hard to discover things unless you're handed it on a plate. And then, you know, I accept that we are in a very different world to the one that embraced us so well, you know, 40 years ago.
Going back to 2001, I wanted to talk about a different sort of pivotal moment for Simon, something a bit more serious. After a routine visit to the doctor for some hearing loss in his ear, they discovered something that nobody wants to hear.
Yeah, so I was about 40. I was producing an album by a band called the Duke Spirits down here in Brighton, actually, before I moved down here myself. And I was working on the production and just suddenly started noticing my hearing was going a bit like kind of feeling you get when you've been swimming and your ear gets blocked up and you can't quite get the water all out of it. It was exactly that kind of feeling. Obviously couldn't do anything about it because I was working, so I just sort of left it, went to see a doctor when I got home, thought I would just probably have to have my ears syringed or something, and it was all going to be fine. Yeah, to cut a long story short, ended up in the hospital a few days after the hearing test, and I'm staring up at this massive big egg in my head on the screen in the doctor's surgery. So yeah, it's of course a horrible news to get that you know you've got this tumor and you either have to have it. Well, the first doctor told me I had to have it removed that day because he was only ever in this hospital once in a blue moon, and I should be grateful that he was even there. And you know, let's get you on the table. And I was like, whoa, no, I'm not going to let you operate on me today because you've just given me this devastating news. I'm not ready for that. You give me a little bit of time to digest and research it a little bit. So he was very annoyed with me and sort of, you know, sent me packing, and I went home and basically researched everything I could about this tumor. Ended up in a different hospital a few weeks later, having a completely different conversation with another specialist who gave me a completely different perspective on it. And the outcome was I didn't have an operation because he gave me the confidence that I didn't necessarily need to have one right then. Have one if you ever feel like you need to have it out. Some people just want, when they see they've got a tumor in their brain, they can't deal with it. They just want it out, like Alien, just get it out of me. Whereas I didn't think that. I didn't care because it wasn't affecting me on a daily basis, apart from the fact that I don't hear anything in my right ear. And that's never coming back with an operation or without. That's gone forever because it's a tumor that's connected to the nervous system. And obviously part of the thing was he said that you eventually may lose some feeling in your face, or you may get dizzy, or your arm might stop working, or your right leg might stop working. At that point, come back in and we'll deal with it. His way of dealing with it was completely different to the other guy, which was just saw a hole in the side of your head and we'll take it out and hopefully it'll be all right. And I was like, that doesn't sound that great to me. So I'd lived with this thing for a long time without really telling anybody other than my close family. Well, not even my kids, to be honest. I didn't tell them about it at all because they were too young to really understand that kind of thing. So I kept it secret, and then I just thought, well, look, the book is a good time to talk about it because it shows you that you can live with these things and just get on with your life, and it needn't debilitate you particularly. I mean, I have regular MRI scans, every 6 months, and it's constantly monitored. I've obviously got great advice from the medical community, and if I ever need to get anything sorted about it, I feel confident I can. And I sort of thought, well, that's important. I've kept it away from the music business because I didn't want my authenticity as an A&R person and a producer to be in jeopardy. If I'm trying to appeal to a new band, I'll mix your record for you, and they're like, but you're deaf. Like, what the fuck? You can't hear anything, so why would you be a good person? And I always sort of thought it affected how people might perceive me as a reliable person in the A&R world or as a producer. So I just kept it quiet. But then I just thought that's just stupid. I don't have anything to prove to anybody. So that's why I thought I'd write about it in the book. And I decided to start the book with it because it enabled me to then go backwards and forwards in time and use it almost like a sort of device. Because it's always hard when you've got all these anecdotes from the past and you've got this life lived in music. Like, where do we start? Do we just start at the very beginning? Do we start with my dad? Do we start... it was very hard to kind of know how to start the book. But once I'd decided to reveal this thing, I knew that was how I needed to start the book, and actually made the rest of it really easy.
And that does it for today's episode. Many thanks to Simon again for sharing with us. And be on the lookout for the release of his book, In One Ear, hopefully sometime this year. You can also check out his latest musical project, Lost Horizons, wherever you get your music. And a quick reminder that you can also buy my book on 80s musicians and where they are today, 80s Redux, and its sequel, Live Through That, on 90s artists, wherever you buy your books. And if you like this show, please leave a review where you're listening. It always helps others find us. And of course, subscribe so that you won't miss an episode. Thanks for listening.